away.
Hush.
You know what you're doing? Almost there. Almost there. Almost there. Yay! Is it celebration time? Oh, good God.
Why did I ever quit reviewing all these awesome games? There's just so many good ones. What? What?
Really?
What? Oh yeah. Yeah, I know I'm a little late on this one. Sorry guys, but sometimes life gets in the way. And I know I'm cheating here, so got me some slack. I'm trying to get him to sleep. I actually managed to write, record, and edit about 2/3 of the Doom 2016 review when, well, this happened. But something happened at the beginning of this month. Not him. He happened 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 14 years ago. This guy's favorite liquor already, favorite car. My wife is looking me up. Something actually happened at the beginning of this month that made me want to come back and do another review for you guys. And that something is AM2R. Or another Metroid 2.
Another Metroid 2 remake was created from Milton Guastai's, no idea how to pronounce your name, dude, sorry. Desire to see what Metroid 2 would look like if it had the modern gameplay elements from Super Metroid and Zero Mission, as well as the more modern visuals from the newer games. Made in Game Maker Studio and developed over a long period reaching all the way back to 2005, this project was a clear labor of love and respect for the Metroid series. And over 10 years later, AM2R was finally released on Metroid's 30th anniversary, August 6th, 2016. Of course, Nintendo promptly DMCA'd every corner of the internet that has download links to the game, but that's a topic I probably am not going to cover later. The real question is, does it deserve to be listed alongside not only the other Metroid games, but to be listed as a 30th anniversary game? Also, minor disclaimer, I kind of hope to have this fixed by the time I upload this, but if the game footage is kind of boring, I apologize. I've had the game crash me multiple times, and also ending up corrupting all of my footage, about 10 to 12 hours last I checked, repeatedly. It just crashes and corrupts everything, and I got a little frustrated by it. In fact, I've beaten the game 3 times today alone, and it's still doing it, so I'm a little tired of playing right now. I'll try to go back and do one more session for some mid-game footage, but if it sucks and it's boring in like the same 3 areas, I'm sorry, I'm not playing this game for the 5th time in a week, I'm just not. Of course, I will be spoiling nearly everything about this game, so do yourself a favor and don't watch this if you don't want to ruin your first play experience. If you like the series, I would highly encourage at least a casual playthrough on an easy difficulty before reading or watching a review, for maximum enjoyment. I'm also going to intentionally avoid any references with the original game as much as possible. While this is a remake and tries to stay true to the original spirit for the most part, I don't like reviewing remakes by comparing them to the originals, as it's called a remake for a reason. It's meant to be a separate experience and should thus be judged accordingly. Now, I do have a few points about the original game, but most are anecdotal bullet points and don't really affect my overall vision for AM2R. As a Metroid 2 remake, the game has you landing on the planet of SR-388 in an attempt to eradicate all of the Metroids on the planet. Once you eliminate the Metroids in a given area, there's an earthquake, clearing out lava, rocks in the way, and letting you progress forward. Each area has its own unique theme and environmental challenges. For example, the cordite mines have crystals that you have to actually destroy, and then you end up doing a bit of mining to proceed. The Chozo Temple has a bunch of carvings and statues and machinery laying around. Eventually you'll end up in the Queen's Lair, destroy the last of the Metroids, and right after doing so, Samus witnesses a new hatchling being born right in front of her eyes, and it ends up thinking that Samus is its own mother. Realizing the immense scientific potential that she has on her hands here, she takes the Metroid to a research station orbiting nearby in hopes that the Federation can use this Metroid for the greater good. I mean, just imagine. Hey, I said hopes. You can't blame a girl for trying. Alright, first thing I want to talk about is the design of the game. After all, a poorly handled Metroid game is kinda worse than having no Metroid game. No, bad Nintendo, bad Nintendo! Bad. There was a large focus on getting Samus's handling right, and it shows. Morph Ball, Screw Attack, Shine Sparking are all very well executed and done incredibly well. Samus has a weight to her now, which I actually really like when jumping around and landing, but not during the actual act of jumping. She's a little too heavy. The basis here seems to be Zero Mission's more cartoony and action-packed movement, which was a departure from the more floaty and slower movements of Super Metroid and Fusion. Well, that is until you find the high jump, and then it just kind of feels like gravity got halved, but that's a topic for another day. The Spider Ball is actually generally pretty well done, but there is the occasional gripe where it just kind of outright fails and drops me off a wall. Funnily enough, on the exact same block on both of my playthroughs so far, and it only happened the first time. Weird. Enemy design and level design both have the game take a severe nosedive. Your average enemy is actually pretty good. Most of them do the job as trash mobs. Some are super obnoxious, like the exploding machinery in the water segment, but usually it's pretty okay. It's mostly the bosses and the Metroids that are just completely obnoxious to me. Speaking of Metroids, the hitboxes on the Metroids are just astronomically tiny. It's so frustrating. If you're literally 2 pixels off their tiny underbelly, the missiles just plink uselessly off the armor. And the AI for the Metroids is obnoxious too. It'll dodge out of the way seemingly at random right before you're about to hit it, making it hard to aim and ammo manage things like super missiles, where when you held the jump button for 2 frames too long and jumped way too high over the hitbox, and then the follow-up shot just misses because it just arbitrarily decided to dive out of the way. And because of that, you went from only needing to shoot 2 or 3 super missiles to over 30 regular missiles now, since you don't have any more super missiles. And it just needlessly drags out the fight, and it doesn't even make it hard, it's just frustrating. A hard and challenging boss fight might be a missile sink that's easy to shoot at, sure. But there's usually other things going on to make the fight harder, like the Nightmare boss fight from Fusion, for example, where it controls gravity and messes with your ability to maneuver and avoid attacks and even shoot at it. Or the Plasma boss, also from Fusion, where you can sit there and dump missiles into it, but it's also shooting at you, and you've got the pollen coming down trying to hit you, and it's a multi-stage affair, and yeah, you're pumping it, but it's a relatively challenging boss fight. Making something that's just hard to hit, fast to dodge your attacks for no reason, and just flat out obnoxious to fight doesn't make the fight hard or fun. It's just annoying. Level design is also pretty hit or miss. The actual theming and placement of the levels is pretty well done. Pacing of advancements can sometimes be a little weird, with the lava further back being what moves instead of the one that's like right next door to you, and even items being moved around from the original. With the addition of new abilities from the modern games, the level design was also tweaked to support these new additions, such as Shine Sparking. There's actually 2 major sections that I'd like to call attention to in regards of level design. There's one section where you reach a dead end and see some Morph Ball machinery. When you get into it, the camera pans over a bit to a robot you're now in control of. Pretty cool, but the major problem with this room comes from a lack of good design. A good level designer would put the obvious pit of super missiles either in the way of the camera pan, so when you take control you kind of get a glimpse of this weird pile for a brief moment, which should make you want to go at least explore, or would have the robot and the missile pit swap their positions, so that way when you took control of the robot and walked the only way that you could, you would see this pile, and coupled with the control explanation you get when taking over for the first time, it should immediately become obvious that you need to use the robot to grab a missile, and then you take it somewhere, which, leading along the path, will take you right to where the super missile block is that you need to destroy to progress. The way it's designed now draws all of your attention to the path you need to go to progress, which is good, but then it completely fails to introduce that the pile even exists, and once you go off the beaten path and actually find the pile, it doesn't explain that the pile is actually super missiles and that you can actually destroy blocks with them. You have to really look at the pile for a second or two before you even realize what you're looking at, when, if it was better designed, would be much more obvious that this was the super missiles that you need. Even something as simple as putting one of the missiles on the top layer and then giving the pile a subtle green glow would go a long way in encouraging the player to at least investigate. The way it is, it just looks like a pile of spare parts you shouldn't even waste your time with. Now, a second example here would be nearing the end of the game. You've just passed a very long hallway with a few upgrades along the way, and you reach a point where the level seems to loop on itself. And then you encounter a Metroid at the top of the loop, dispatching it pretty easily. Another earthquake happens, and when you try to leave the loop, you find that the lava has actually risen, completely blocking off your escape, and another Metroid was discovered. Okay. Upon traversing the loop again, you find that the roof has collapsed a little bit, and you're able to proceed upwards. Then you enter a fight with one of the most annoying bosses in all of the Metroid series. In fact, it's so poorly done, I'd be willing to put it in a top 10 worst battles of all time. Coming in at number 8, it's the final boss to Microsoft's Word, Clippy. You're put in a room with two entrances, and you enter to see the remains of a Federation force. See what I did there? It's because they're a reference to the game. Get it? It's a Federation force. Get it? Please buy our game. You're entering the room and then you see the remains of a Federation force fighting off a Metroid when it mutates into an Omega Metroid right in front of them, and then within seconds easily dispatches them. While cool, this is where the ugly starts. The hitbox is just high enough where you have to jump, but small enough to where if you jump for longer than 3 or 4 frames, you're going to miss it entirely. It can jump up and knock you down on the ground for a few seconds if you're standing on the ground when it lands. It breathes fire at you. It has supersonic claws that can deflect your missiles and has almost no charge time and no warning. It can lunge at you. It can swipe at you in the air. It's pretty much a complete nuisance, and there's no safe spot. But the real terrible part here is the arena that you're fighting in. It's so incredibly easy just to get stuck in a corner where you can just sit there and pound on Samus while she just lays there, having to accept it, literally unable to escape since the Metroid blocks movements through it, and Samus has so few invulnerability frames during all of this that she can actually get hit by the very beginning of one attack and then the very end of the same attack, with multiple different attacks that the Metroid has, and on top of that, it can actually hit you so hard that it can completely knock you out of the room that you're fighting it in. While that doesn't sound like a bad thing, keep in mind that you've been playing for a good solid 5 to 10 minutes at this point since your last save, and the save room has been completely blocked off. That's right, if you get blasted out of the room when you only have, let's say, 2 energy tanks and like 30 missiles and no super missiles, you are literally unable to beat this boss until you die and do the whole trek over again. And before you go all get good in the comments section, which sadly enough I've seen on Reddit when another review called attention to this abysmal design problem, and you say it's a non-issue if you aren't a babby bab that can actually play Metroid, the next section is absolutely no issue even though you fight 3 of these things. Why, you ask? It's simple, the level design doesn't fuck you nearly as hardcore. Sure, if you're trying to only hit the critical hit spot in the back after it jumps, the smaller amount of headroom can be a problem, but it's not a complete progress blocker. It just means that you need to try harder to do an optional bit of extra damage. And B, there's no way to have your entire fight ruined because a stray hit ejected you from the fight. And C, it doesn't cause you to lose 10 minutes of progress every time you fail the fight, which you probably will your first few times, since there's a save station literally 30 seconds away from each of the next 3 encounters. I think even beyond level design issues like these, and there are many, many more I simply just do not have the time or energy to cover in detail. My main gripe with the level design is item placement. It's far too easy to find upgrades, and SAMUS's upgrade path is a little weird and oddly paced. Having the power bombs be in their own little special reactor area was strange, and hell, even the escape scene afterwards in the boss fight you have to do, very, very forced and completely unnecessary. There's long segments where you will find nothing, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you'll get an additional 5 missile tanks and 3 energy tanks out of nowhere. And then you just get no more upgrades for another 20 minutes, and then you just get like another huge wave of upgrades. It's weird. Overall, it's a very hit or miss experience. I'm not really that impressed with a lot of it. There's a lot of things that he gets right with his design, like I love the weight that Samus has. I love the way that trash mobs are designed. I love a lot of the game's elements, because a lot of them are really well done. But there's even little details that he misses out on, in addition to the level design and everything. Like another great example is it's impossible to farm now. One of the great parts about Zero Mission and Super Metroid was that if you were low on health or ammo, every so often you'd have these enemies that would come out of pipes or lava pits or whatever, and the new ones wouldn't appear until you grabbed whatever pickup they dropped, which made it super easy to just kind of pick a pipe and farm. But you can't do that in AM2R anymore, because they just kind of keep spawning at the same rate, so you'll be trying to jump and pick up pickups and you'll just have like 3 or 4 different things flying at you constantly, which makes it hard to dodge, and then because you're focused on dodging the whole time, you're not picking up pickups. So it's little details like that just detract from the whole experience, and it's very jarring and very frustrating. Being based on Game Maker Studio gives the game some definite flexibility. It performs well on most systems and has some decent under-the-hood options for rendering, but nothing too fancy. The game is limited to a 320 by 240 resolution, meaning no widescreen support, but there are multipliers you can apply to it to make the image scale as much as you want. Playing in a window is supported, as well as options like VSync. You can play with X-input gamepads, including Xbox pads, and I even tinkered around with my Steam controller for a bit. Spoiler alert, don't do that. Audio is pretty okay. Some sounds are crisp and clear, others are muddled, almost like they're different frequencies, and some are just straight rips from other games. Load times are non-existent, but to be fair, I do have a Samsung 840 SSD and a 6TB RAID array, so that probably contributing as well. As an aside in my footage, I had VSync disabled as it was introducing some gnarly input delay on my system, but having it disabled also introduced some gnarly tearing on all of the displays I tried it on, which is kind of frustrating. The engine is locked to 60 FPS no matter what you enable or disable, which is kind of expected, but also kind of frustrating for people with higher refresh rate monitors. I mean, it's 2016 after all. I know it's a fan game and everything, but you really shouldn't be capping at 60 FPS unless you've done something stupid with the game and limited something to the game's frame rate. So why not include the option? All in all, it's a very robust and feature-rich engine that he's built on top of Game Maker here. But, well, you guessed it, there's still some major problems with it. For example, I've had saves corrupt. Twice. Not possible to record footage with shadowplay in this game for some reason. I just get a blank video track every time I try. After losing all of that footage, which I will fully take the blame for since I didn't bother to test while recording, I just kind of went with it and played the entire game. I did switch to OBS, which completely murdered my performance, and then on top of that made the game crash twice, and the third time it actually BSOD'd my computer and corrupted another save and my footage yet again. Strike 2. I really want to like this game, guys, but it is actively trying not to let me. I think the thing that aggravates me the most about this game is just the blatant theft that's involved with it. Now, I understand borrowing sprites for when you're working on the game, and that's cool. I have no problem with that. And I also understand that Metroid 2 had a definite lack of music and color and, well, pretty much everything we associate with Metroid nowadays, but seeing as how the doors are literally different for every area you go to, why is the first area still using Zero Mission's doors? Why are there not unique doors there? Why are there straight ripped, not altered at all samples from Metroid Prime's music used in the game's music here? Some of the music tracks also sound like kind of bad bootlegs at points, taking me out of my immersion factor. Metroid as a series is known for its amazing environmental tracks and pumping battle themes, but this game seems to focus on the music too much in the wrong ways, taking it from a background level of polish to the main focus in areas that really don't need it. Some of the tracks are absolutely phenomenal pieces of ambiance, such as the Distribution Center track. Others are just kind of out of place. I swear I heard a Metroid Prime 2 track in the game somewhere. And others are just plain bad, like the ear-grating theme leading up to the Queen's Lair. On top of that, there's a lot of small and jarring things that happen that could very easily be tweaked to improve the overall feel. The simple stuff too, like transitional fades when loading a new save or returning to the main menu. The jarring jump is a little unsettling when you compare it to other Metroid games and how they handle loading and such. Jumping back to level design for a second here, there isn't a point of no return in this game, which is nice. But to counteract that, if you thought the loop section was bad and stretching, there's an absolutely abysmal long stretch of nothing if you want to backtrack from the final save point to other zones if you want to do a final sweep and pick up all of the items. Like, I'm talking a good, 10 solid minutes of just walking and not doing much of anything. When you combine the reused assets, the lack of the polish in the art, the lack of polish in the sound, the level design, Metroid battles, everything all together, I feel really bad for saying this, but development should have just completely skipped releasing on the 30th anniversary and just waited for when this project was truly finished. Maybe then we would finally have a worthy 2D sequel.
Do I feel that AM2R is a bad game? No, not really. Is it a good game? No, not really. The problem with AM2R is that it focuses too much on trying to be an outstanding knockout Metroid game instead of just being a Metroid game. There's a lot of a focus on bringing back the new things like shine sparking and all that fun stuff that didn't exist in Metroid 2, that a large focus on the core gameplay got dropped. And that's where my issue is. If you're a casual fan of Metroid, or if you've never played Metroid before, give it a shot. You'll probably really enjoy it. I would recommend you playing Metroid Fusion, Super Metroid, or even Metroid Prime, more so than AM2R though. Play with it, see if you like it. If you do, try one of the real games. If you're a hardcore fan of Metroid, and I would denote myself to be one, I just don't see what this game has for you. Sure, it's got speedrunning and all that fun stuff, but long term, I just don't think it's going to have that allure that all the other Metroid games have. But approach it with a casual mindset, thinking it's a casual game, maybe with a cold brew in hand. You might have yourself a good time. Go into it thinking it's going to be more than a Metroid game or a knockout, fantastically 10 out of 10 game. You're going to be a little disappointed. Manage your expectations accordingly. It might turn out pretty good. Now as for me, I got a review I got to get back to. So this is James at Games, signing off. Remember to leave me comments down below, telling me what you thought about this review. Hit that like or dislike button accordingly. Hit me up on social media. And if you're excited to see if I ever actually come out with this review or not, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. All that said, I will see you guys next time.
Okay, baby, get this. No, not that. No. You're not going the right way.
Hush.
You're not supposed to be talking to that
Will
person.
you be quiet? Let me play my goddamn game.
Well, I would if you were playing it right. Would you just complete the mission? You're not even... What are you doing? You're not even getting them. James, you're terrible.
I'm better than you are.
No,
I'd like
you're
to see you
not.
do better.
Fine, give me the controls.
No.
And I will complete this mission myself.
Quiet on set.